Yeah, thank you for doing that. Carole, I'm not sure I had mentioned to you that well, yes, you know that we record these, and hopefully you're okay with that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. All right. So welcome to Coffee with everybody. This morning we have the pleasure of Carole Brodrick joining us, who's development director for Family Promise. I apologize for not putting in a tiny little blurb in the email announcement about what Family Promise is, but I'm guessing that most of us have at least the slightest. It's not a completely new organization name to us, and obviously that's the point of having Carole join us to explain all about it, the journey they've been on, what's in for the future. So let's start in the usual way for Carole's benefit. Let's do kind of the briefest introductions of ourselves so she has a sense of who's here, and then we'll turn it over to her. And Marge Roberson is also with her and maybe also talking about it. She's a longtime volunteer with the organization, and then we can open it up for questions. So let's see, why don't we start with Elaine? Oh, you're on mute at the moment, Elaine.
I've muted everybody, so unmute when you're speaking.
Oh, still on mute. There you go.
Ooh, okay.
There you go. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm relatively new to Natick. I followed my son and his wife, Josh and Jean, here about 6 years ago from Westport. I've been involved with disability activities since 1989 or so. Witnessed the signing of the Fair Housing Amendments Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So, hello, welcome.
Thanks, Elaine.
I can't identify the echo if anybody has any ideas.
Yeah, I think it's because Elaine has on twice, but
yeah, but she's muted both times, I think.
Well, now she isn't. But
oh, now she is. Oh, okay, now.
Yeah,
okay.
And then Ricky, who is appearing on our screen as Jay, but that's okay. You're on mute as well, Ricky, if you want to just come off. Oh, still on mute. Possibly might have to get Jay to help you with that. Why don't we go to Bill? And
there
we go.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ricky. Yeah. Go ahead, Ricky.
Hey, I know Family Promise very. My name is Ricky Ball. Yeah, I think you're not hearing me.
Yep.
Yeah, we
are now.
Okay. Yeah. This is an interesting talk for me because this is a second generation for Family Promise since Sue Crosley has retired. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to get the second handoff of the relay. But for those of you who don't know me, I am now an expatriate.
Right.
Unfortunately, but I'm so glad to be back with all of you. I live in Canton now at Orchard Cove, but my heart is still with you and I care about what goes on in Natick. So here I am.
Thanks, Ricky. Bill?
Hi, Bill Ramage here, supporter of Family Promise. Just Coffee with a Purpose regular and like to come and hear what folks have to say. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, Bill. Tom?
There we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Tom Gielli. Tom
We have some slow bandwidth.
team member, quite familiar with Family Promise, and I do contribute. Yeah, I do contribute to Family Promise and follow their activities closely.
Right. Thanks, Tom. Pat?
Good morning. I'm Pat Conaway, and kind of the Keep Natick Beautiful guy, and focus a lot on trash and trails and waterways and local environment. And I was co-founder of Coffee with a Purpose with my sister Sally and Carrie and Leslie. So
thank you, Pat. Carrie?
Hi, good morning, Carol. As you may know, I did a fair amount of maintenance work getting the building over here. Street up. I'm sorry.
So we were just getting some feedback. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So anyway, town meeting member, treasurer for Pat's Keep Natick Beautiful and involved in other environmental issues around town here. And welcome. Nice to have you here and hear more about the history of Family Promise.
Thank you, Carrie. Cindy?
Cindy Bates. I'm 3 years in Natick. I live in Natick Center near the fire station. I'm probably the one who knows the least about Family Promise. I think I've seen things about it, but I look forward to hearing all about it today. I'm a trail steward and I am otherwise, and I help pick up Coolidge Fields.
Thanks, Cindy. And
I'm working for the CPA,
Yay,
Community
good.
Preservation Act.
Carole Berkowitz?
Good morning, Carol. Good to see that your name is spelt with an E.
That's exactly what I was thinking when I
That's
saw
sort of
your
a
name.
rare thing. Yeah, so I've been in Natick over 50 years and I live on Lake Cochituate. And I do a lot of peace work now. And that's the center of my interest for the moment, and support this man from Rwanda who is my dearest soulmate, and he happens to be here with me now, so visiting. So this is a wonderful time for me, but I've done a lot of work for Lake Cochituate over the years, and I'm a town meeting member and just in general concerned about issues around the town. Thank you for coming. Oh, Sam Gloyd.
Oh,
Sam Gloyd. Yes, I'm sorry. I meant to mention how I was there seeing him take off.
oh,
From
I probably met you that day then when he took
I
off.
think we did. I think we did. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Sally?
Good morning, Carol. I'm going to repeat Carole Berkowitz's Sam Gloyd connection with Family Promise, because I was there that morning too when he took off. And I'm a fan of Family Promise, and it was for a while housed, or there was some participation in the spiritual center, and that's when I knew a little more about it. But I'm really my brother. I'm a shadow for my brother Pat, who can lead the way in a lot of great, wonderful ways. I'm fairly new to Natick, but I sure do look forward to hearing what you have to share. I think Family Promise is a unique concept.
Thank you, Sally. Brinley?
Hi, good morning. Brinley Vickers, Natick resident for about 23 years, town meeting member, definitely a Family Promise fan, and excited to hear you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Brinley. Martin, we skipped over you in the beginning.
Yep, Martin Kessel. I'm co-host of the technical aspects here, and I've been around Natick a long time, but I'm afraid I'm one of the ones who is not yet familiar with Family Promise. I look forward to that, but involved in a lot of the things, town meeting, and then all the hot issues of the week. We have the CPA campaign, and we've got the dam battle, which is coming to town meeting tomorrow. So there's a lot going on.
Thanks, Martin. Sarah?
Hi, Sarah Hanna. I am also a town meeting member, interested in environmental stuff, but also very interested in Family Promise when the program was housed in various temples and churches and what have you. I was the first Congregational Church laundry lady for many years. So I feel like I've lost a little bit of that day-to-day touch with what's going on during the pandemic when we stopped having people come to our church. So I'm very interested to hear what's going on, but been aware of Family Promise since. Remember years and years ago, Marge was one of the people in our church who came to the rest of us and said, hey, there's this group I think we ought to look into. So I'm really interested to hear what's going on right now.
Great. And myself, also with the First Congregational Church and moderator of this group. So Carole and Marge, you guys can introduce yourself in whichever order, and then if you want to share the screen, feel free to do that as well. And I guess we'll have people use kind of the raise hand function if possible, if they want to ask questions.
Marge, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Marge Roberson. I was actually on the committee that first decided to get Family Promise up and running so many years ago. I was coordinator at First Congregational Church for I don't remember how many years. And yes, on Sunday morning, we would pile all our laundry under the clothes racks and it would magically go to Sarah's house and she would magically bring it back all clean. And yeah, I helped get when we first moved into the Baptist church with one shower and a washer and a dryer and one room, and then it became 2 rooms. And then, so yeah, so I've been around for a while. And now I'm helping with the auction, and I think that's all right now at the moment.
And I'm Carole Brodrick. I've been with Family Promise since, well, for 12, I'm in my 13th year with the organization. So I've seen it more from when we were at the Common Street Church to where we are today. I really want to thank you all for inviting me here, Carrie, for bringing it to the attention of the committee about Family Promise, because we truly are a community response to family homelessness. And Natick has been an unbelievable supporter of Family Promise. It's I live in Westwood, and I was really involved in Westwood while my children were growing up. But I have never seen a community come out in so much support of this, you know, like an organization like Family Promise. And I'm very grateful for all your support. And I know many of you, like I know Ricky and Jay Ball pretty well. A lot of your names I recognize. So I'm so glad that you let me know, Sally and Cindy, that you were there when Sam took off during COVID for his bike ride across the country. That was kind of a unique experience, but it was fun. And he's an awesome, we really miss him at the organization. The presentation that I have, because some of you don't know anything about us, so bear with me. I use this PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you because it keeps me on track. And if you have any questions, just, shout them out. Okay. Just to give you an overview, in last year, the second year of the pandemic, we experienced significant growth. We had a 28% increase in the families that we served over the prior year. We provided resources and support for 64 families, which included 101 children. So that meant that we kept 64 families from being homeless. This year, we're finding that we're tracking to meet or exceed, because right now I believe we have 61 families that have been served so far this year. And as Ricky alluded to, this has been a year of transition for us. Our executive director, Susan Crossley, who was with us for 8 years, retired in June. We changed our model of shelter. So that's like a milestone for us. And what I'll try to do is give you some background on why we changed the model, so you understand what thought went in, what process we took to come to that conclusion. Okay. We have our new shelter model opened June 21st of this year. And many of you talked about it, that we did when we first started back in 2008, when we opened our doors. The whole process before we opened our doors took, it was around 5 years, wasn't it, Marge, trying to get enough congregations on board?
Easily.
Yeah, because we're part of a national organization and they give us a blueprint, every family promise, a blueprint of how to run your shelters. And they require at least 14 host locations that would open up their doors and convert their classroom spaces into bedrooms 1 week at a time, 3 to 4 times a year. And then volunteers from the congregations and from the community and the business community could come in and provide meals and hospitality to the families. So our original model was during the day, they would be at our day center, which initially was at Common Street Church, and that's where families would use as their mailing address, their home address, all their belongings would be there. In the evening at 5:30 or 6 o'clock, our van would take our families from the day center to one of our host locations, which could have been FCC in Natick 1 week, and then the next week at the Dover Church. What happened during the pandemic on March 13th, Friday, March 13th, 2020, we said we can't do congregate living. It wasn't safe for our families. It wasn't safe for our volunteers because we were all panicking then. How do you catch this thing, you know? So on March 3rd, Friday afternoon, the board and Sue Crossley made the decision to move our families into the hotels out in Framingham. We needed to have a 2-bedroom hotel with the ability for the families to cook their own meals. We continued to give them we were able to pivot our program so that we continued to deliver services to the families via Zoom. We all have gotten so good at Zoom. We still had our donors and our supporters supply gift cards for groceries for the families, but our program did not miss a beat. Little did we know that we were going to keep the families there for almost 2.5 years. But during the pandemic, we conducted a strategic plan, and we really took a look at how we delivered services. And we formed a task force that included graduates from our programs, members of our congregations, and our staff, and actually some of our business community. And we talked about the model of the rotational model. And what came out of it was that it's extremely stressful for our families because the children not knowing where that rotational model every week was really hard on the families. And we found things like parents told us that their children experienced bedwetting issues or anxiety. So the decision was made that a static model was going to be the best way to offer shelter for our families. Then the question was, where do we do it? How do we do it? And do it in a cost-effective manner? In 2017, we purchased 6 Mulligan Street. And in the family section of the building, we had 3 separate meeting rooms. One was for, we kept it for babies that were in shelter who took naps during the day or parents who worked night jobs. So we had that room. Then we had another room that was for meetings with the family coaches. And then a third room was a study room. We had computers set up in it, etc. So what we did was we converted those 3 rooms into bedrooms. So we could house 3 families at a time versus 4 families at a time. And then we had to do a lot of other retrofitting to our existing building. But what our goal was in our rotational model, families stayed on average 146 days in shelter. And we thought, we decided during our strategic plan that we wanted to make it so that families only stayed in shelter 90 days or less, because congregate living is not the best situation for any family to have to live with, because you're living with 3 families that you have no personal connection with. You're just brought together because of the fact that you're facing homelessness. Okay, any questions so far?
Yeah, I've got one. I guess is changing that model. And forgive me for already forgetting the terminology you used to go from place to place to just being in one place. If you're part of a national chapter, local chapter of a national organization. Is the national organization also doing that? Are you trend setting for them? How, how does that?
Okay.
I can answer that question.
y-
When we first started, there were some organizations that already had that model.
Oh,
So it was, we were recommended that this was the way to do it, but there were some organizations that already had an in-house model.
okay.
So, and then Carol, you can continue that conversation, but it wasn't brand new.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 200 affiliates across the country, but what our national organization does is they just give us the blueprint. And then we each have our own board of directors. We each have our own budget. We get we don't get any financial support from the national organization.
Okay.
Carol, do you want to put that on slideshow so it's a full screen?
Wait, say that one more time.
Put that on slideshow so it's a full screen slide.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Marge.
If you know how to do that. That was me.
Yep. Is that better?
Much,
Does that go?
much better.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Marge. Oh, wait, no, wait. Now I can't see. I'm
Just
going
use
too
your
far.
arrow keys to go back and forth or click.
Wait, now I lost. Wait, I'm going too
Go back.
fast.
Go back, go back. Oh, don't put it on.
Okay, wait, let me go back.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Let me go here. Okay, so we're back there. You want it full screen. There we go. So in this picture, when we decided to do this, we have 3 fully functioning bathrooms in our day center. So each family receives their own bathroom. We went out to the community and we reached out to Bob's Furniture Foundation, and they came in and they provided all the furniture in the darn it. Sorry. Oh, I did it again, Marge.
Is it on automatic?
Oh,
No, I don't know why it does that.
is it?
It's on automatic.
Oh, shit.
Just keep it that way.
Yeah,
No,
that's fine.
I'll figure this out. I just wanted to show you. Everything was provided by Bob's Furniture except the family room down below where you see the mural. That was provided by Bright Horizons Daycare Center. Their employees have volunteered for us at our annual walk to end homelessness that we typically do at Natick High School, or prior to that, we did it at the senior center. And prior to that, we did it on the Natick Common. But they chose us to do a bright space. And what a bright space is, they provide an educational play area in shelters. And they did their own fundraising. They totally redid our downstairs play area for the children. And so that's for children in shelter, but also shelter's only one of our programs that we offer at Family Promise. We have a continuum of programs, which I'll go into. Let me click this. Okay. Our other program that we offer, families come into shelter, and in shelter, our family coaches stabilize our families. They do a lot of digging and interviewing with the families, trying to come up to what the root cause of their homelessness is. And then they build a set of goals that families are asked to, that the families will work towards while they're in shelter and in our SAIL program. The areas that we look at, the first thing we look at is medical. Is there any outstanding medical issues that need to be addressed? Then we look at their finances. We start looking at budgeting. Budgeting and finance is a big part of our program, because we want families to save money, but we want families to also pay down debt while they're in our program, because we have learned over the years that debt reduction and increasing your credit scores makes it so much better for you when you go out and apply for an apartment, to have a good credit score. Families set goals in transportation, because if you live in Metro West, you need to be able to have a car or some way to get to and from work. So they have to set goals in transportation. We have them set goals in vocation and education, because we can get families jobs, but what we need to do is find a way for them to have a career path so that they can maximize their income. Then we have a housing goal. So what town do you want to live in? How much can you afford? It ties back into budgeting, and these are all goals that they meet with weekly with their family coaches to make progress in. Once families get stabilized and begin working on goals, and I was remiss at saying this, families who qualify for a program must be willing and able to work. If families can't work, or they come from a domestic abuse issue, or they have a mental health issue, we don't have the staff to serve families in that category. What we can do is refer them to proper resources. So what we look for are families that can work, willing to work, and are highly motivated to make change. And these families are the ones that typically fall through the system, fall through the cracks, because they want to work, they want to provide for their families, they just aren't making enough money. Okay. Once families are stabilized and working on their goals, we have what we call the SAIL program, which is a transitional living program, where family promises coaches help them find an apartment in a community that they want to live in, that they can afford the rent. And we continue to provide the family coaching for them. And again, primary goals in here, and this is a great statistic, and we don't have 2022 stats yet, but in 2021, families in our SAIL program increased their income by 67% of those families increased their income, and they increased it by 26%.
Wow.
And 100% of them meant their debt reduction. Okay.
It's astounding.
Okay. Now, one of the things that we do in our SAIL program is that we do some subsidies for families in their rent, because we want them, when they're in SAIL, that's the time that they can continue to pay down debt. And so what we do is we budgeted $600 per family in our SAIL program. And typically we have about 12 to 15 families a year in that, because they have to come through our shelter program to be in our SAIL program. Okay. But what we've done is we do a lot of networking in the community. So we work a lot with the city of Framingham. They have a program called the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance, and the acronym is TBRA. And what that program is that the city of Framingham received federal funding, and they will pay rent. It's a program where the tenant only has to pay 30% of their income towards rent, and the city will pick up the other 70%. So this is awesome for our families, because then that $600 doesn't have to come out of our budget. We utilize the TBRA program. Framingham loves our program, and they reached out to us because they know that if they recommend a family, or we put a family into their TBRA program, that first of all, we won't put a family into an apartment unless if they can afford the apartment when the subsidies are done. Okay. They also love our case management that we do, because there's accountability. So it's a win-win. Framingham statistics look great, because when the year time is up, they have success rates. Families are able to be sustainable. It's great for us because we don't have to utilize our funding to subsidize that rent. Meanwhile, what the family coaches do with the families are, since they're only paying 30% of their income in rent, we really bolster their savings and getting that debt reduction down even further, so that when they're out of our program, either their debt is gone or they have very little left. Any questions?
I'm sure you'll get to this eventually, because I know the auction is one thing you want to talk about, but as you cite some of these numbers, I'm really curious how big your organization is, what your annual budget is like. I assume you must have some paid staff to do professional caseworker type services and so forth.
Yes.
So whenever is appropriate to get there, but I don't want to disrupt you.
Okay, and if I'll try to move along quickly so that you guys have time to ask those kinds of questions. Our biggest program is our LIFE program, which is our homelessness prevention program. And we started this program in December of 2018. I'm sorry, 2017. And the reason why we did was when we interviewed families who had gone through our program, they said, if I only could get your family coaching before I got evicted, I would have never have lost my home. And when a family becomes evicted, it causes an immense amount of trauma in the family, especially for the children, because they have to pack up all their stuff and they're in their cars and they might be couch surfing, staying at one friend's house for a week or so until they got tired of them and then moving around a lot. And we found that we call it in this, I hate to say this industry, going upstream. If we can network with the food pantries and the school systems and a different kind of social services within our Metro West community, and have them refer families that they see are starting to fall behind in rent. We have landlords who come to us with families saying, I have a family, I really like them, but they're starting to not be able to pay their rent, and they make a referral to us. It's not only better for the families, but it's less expensive. Last year, it cost Family Promise on average $1,600 to keep a family in their home. Because when a family comes to us, they have to be motivated, they have to be willing to make change in their life, and they have to be able to work. But what we do is we look and see how much they're in arrears, and then we go and negotiate with their landlord. And sometimes it costs as little as $300 or $400 to get them out of arrears, and sometimes as much as $2,500. But on average, for $1,600, we can keep a family in their home, and then they receive our family coaching. Okay, and this program is where we see we can expand quickly, because you don't need brick and mortar to do this program. You just need to have enough family coaching time to work with the families. Any questions on LIFE? Okay. This program, Steps to Success, is an umbrella program that all our families get to take advantage of. And what this is this focuses on educational and vocational training. So all our families are required to go through our financial literacy class, which is basic budgeting, talks about credit, how to get a good credit score. It talks about balancing a checkbook, all those basic rudimentary financial things that we might teach our children. We have a class to teach all our families about budgeting. We have professionals from the community who come in and teach different modules of this program. And this curriculum was done by our national organization that we share with our families. The other program that all families are required to go through is our Keys to Good Tenancy program. And this program is a program on how to be a good tenant, how to advocate for yourself professionally, what to expect from a landlord. And we have, again, professionals from the community. We have attorneys that come in and talk to our families and in this Keys to Good Tenancy. And then we also have real estate professionals and landlords come in and talk. Having these two certificates when our families go out and apply for rent, an apartment, are really important. Landlords love it that our families have gone through these programs, and they like renting to our families because they know that we're standing behind our families when they sign the lease. Okay. We also have an empowerment group that we have for our families. We partner with Spark Kindness, which many of you probably are familiar with Spark. We applied for a grant from Mutual One to fund that program, and it's an empowerment program for our parents and our children. During the pandemic, we started an online tutoring program where we partnered volunteers in our community, in our network of volunteers, with children in our program who were falling behind and struggling with school. So that became an online tutoring program. And it was so successful. Children were having such great results at school that we have continued that program post-pandemic. We also have a scholarship program. We get a $5,000 a year grant from the foundation, the Women's Foundation from Sudbury. And that is for 5 $1,000 scholarship for women or teen girls going on for more education. And this year we budget, and the Framingham Rotary this year gave us $1,000 scholarships for boys or men. In this Steps to Success, we look at families and say, what would you like to be doing? Have you started college? Have you started a vocational program that you might want to go back and complete? We have a number of families that it's not always about college, but we've had families, and Marge, you know this family well, I think. We had one mom that came into shelter with 3 children. She was a stay-at-home mom. The father was the breadwinner. The father fell out of the picture while in shelter, but the mom really had no skill set. And now she was going to have to be the financial provider for the family. So we got her enrolled in Microsoft Office class so that she could get a skill set of learning Excel, PowerPoint, that whole software program. Then we had volunteers from the community to come in and tutor her so she became proficient. Her first job while still in shelter was an admin job at Walgreens headquarters up in Waltham. Today, she now is an executive assistant to an executive at Newton Wellesley Hospital, and she's doing quite well. We gave her a trajectory to have a career path. And, now her oldest child is in college, her boys are doing great. But it's not always, you don't have to go for a 4-year college education to be able to have that kind of career path. But if it wasn't for our volunteers who were willing to tutor her, if the family coaches didn't point her in that right direction, I'm not sure what would have happened to her. Other times it's families that have started college, but because a life event happened and they had to pull back and they just need to go back for a year or 18 months, we kind of help them plan that out in their budget and in their goals. And so sometimes it is that they go back for school, or sometimes it's going back for like a certified nursing assistant degree. But we are there for the families the whole time. Any questions about Steps to Success? I'm kind of giving you the Reader's Digest version. Okay. If you look at the child-focused outcomes, 100% of our families secured or maintained safe, affordable childcare. That's a biggie for for any parents in our program, because childcare is so expensive, and our family coaches will work with the families to find that childcare. We do childcare subsidies until their vouchers come in, but that's really a big statistic to say that 100% of our 64 families all secured and maintained their childcare in 2021. 67% of our families took advantage of some kind of academic or enrichment classes through our Steps to Success. 89% of our families moved and retained their affordable housing, permanent housing. And this grocery store gift card subsidy, we found, because what's kind of cool about Family Promise is because we're a smaller organization, we can pivot when there's a new need that our family coaches come to staff meetings. And about 6 weeks ago, our family coaches came and they said, the emerging need that we're seeing right now is that our families in our transitional living and our life program can't afford their groceries. And they're having to choose between, like an electric bill or shorting their rent and buying groceries for the families. And we've never had to subsidize that because the family coaches have built that into the family's budgets. But we sent out an email, and many of you may have received it, to our database and explained the situation. And it was like less than 10 business days, we received $8,700 worth of gift cards to Stop and Shop and Market Basket. So the family coaches were able to distribute a stipend of $75 a month per family in our program from September through December. So our community was really responsive. Okay. I put this picture into our presentation because our families come in all shapes and sizes. They could be a two-parent family. It could be a one-parent single dad with children, or it could be a single mom with children. In this particular case, this was a grandmother and a 14-year-old granddaughter on the autistic spectrum. And she came to us because during the pandemic, because she wasn't able to, she had to stop working or well, cut back her hours significantly to stay at home to take care of her granddaughter. And our family coaches worked with her so that they could get the granddaughter squared away. And she came in the summer, so we got her into summer camp with an aide. And then we start working with the grandma to get her back on track and get her debt reduction, get her debt paid down and get her stabilized. But she came in for our, we have a pro bono photographer who comes in for our annual report to take photos. And everybody was commenting, these two were so happy because they were stabilized, they were happy, they were still in their home. So we serve all different kinds of families. You mentioned budget. This doesn't go into specifically what our budget is, but it shows you where our funding comes from. 58% of our funding comes from individuals. And I'd like to see that get a little higher, but I think over the past couple of years, we haven't had an in-person event in almost 3 years now. And during our Walk to End Homelessness and our Keeping the Promise event, that's usually when we bring in a lot of new donors, and we haven't done that since 2019. We get 15% from the business community through their foundations or through their sponsorships of our events. We get 16% from foundations like the Sudbury Foundation, Metro West Health Foundation, etc. 7% comes from our congregations who might have a line item in their budget or do a basket pass for us. 4% last year came from the city of Framingham because they subsidized, they gave us $40,000 towards the cost of the hotels because the families were staying in Framingham. Our budget right now is about 1.2 mil. In this year, we really built the infrastructure to expand our program, to be able to expand the life program specifically, because we really see that as where if we can help the most families. And so the infrastructure, before Sue Crossley retired, she wanted to make sure that we had our doors opened as a static shelter and had the infrastructure for growth. And so we're poised to help as many families as we can. Any questions about program? Yeah, Carrie.
Two questions. I guess one's about program. And one of the first slides you mentioned was the word SAIL in capital letters. I'm guessing that might be an acronym for something.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask me. Usually I have one of the family coaches here. It's sustain. It was supposed to be like, sustaining independent.
That's okay.
I'll email it to Doug and he can send it to you. But we wanted something that was like a sailboat taking off as the visual. So it's sustaining living, independent living.
The other question, and early on, I think you mentioned that that 3 families recently had sort of gone through and gone through the program and found housing. Through the late spring and early summer, I did quite a bit of work at Mulligan Street, and then I also kind of helped to manage the property at Bacon Street. And I know there's two families there that are just left or transition leaving. So the 3 that you mentioned, are they all from Mulligan Street? Because there was this little adorable boy that was in the bedroom that was overlooking Mulligan Street there with the bay window, who's no longer there. And it does seem like there's some transition. So the three that you mentioned, are they all from Mulligan Street or also from Bacon Street?
No, the 3 families in shelter at Mulligan Street, they're in our shelter program. Bacon Street's a project, and Ricky knows this project well, because she and her husband were instrumental in getting that project done. It's a house, it's a home, a 2-family home that the Natick Affordable Housing Trust built. Well, they funded. The Keith Tech School vocational program, they built the 2-family home, and then Family Promise puts our families into the 2 apartments. So those families in Bacon Street are in our sale program, our transitional living program.
Okay. Yeah, because I was just over there last weekend with Stephanie and Bianca, who were sort of helping to get one of the units ready for new people to come in, and then Ranjine Johnson, who you know is part of the Affordable Housing Trust, So I kind of work for them. So I just was curious who the 3 were. So it sounds like it's really lots of people are moving through the system, which is terrific. I'm so impressed with the program, the presentation. I learned so much about it. I kind of only knew a little bit, scratching the surface, doing some work there. So it's terrific.
Yeah, so many times the visual that I use is that the families come to us in a state of trauma and they can't see the forest through the trees. And our family coaches are there to support. We don't do the work. We don't do the work for them. We changed the name of our family coaches were called case managers, but then that gives you the impression that the case manager's doing all the work. And that's not the case. We empower our families to do the work themselves. We give them guidance, we cheer them on, we give them the confidence that they can do this. And I think that's what makes our program different than so many others. We're not throwing money at the problem. We're really giving them the tools they need to be successful long-term. And we really believe that if you take a motivated family and give them the right support, they can not only move themselves out of homelessness, but they can move themselves out of poverty. And we've seen that time and time again. We have more and more of our families looking at the possibilities of being able to buy a home a year or 2 after they're out of our program, which that wouldn't have been the case had they not gone through the program. We're not about serving, like some organizations will tell, we served 1,000 families. That's okay. We're really doing a deep dive with the families that come through. And, as far as our funding goes, you can see we get very little. Last year, it was $40,000 from the city of Framingham. This year, we're not getting that money. But we have to do our own fundraising. So we do the annual Walk to End Homelessness, which is scheduled to take place on April 30th, Sunday, April 30th, up at the high school. I've already gone through the town approval process, so we'll have it up there. And I'm excited about that because that's a very family-friendly activity. Bill, do you have a question?
I do, Carol. You mentioned that you got 4% of your money from government and you identified that as Framingham. It seems to me that the programs you're running save federal, state, local governments tons of money. And I wondered if you've explored grants or funding through existing programs that would supplement what you do. I know some organizations don't want to get involved with government funding, but it just seems to me that you're saving the taxpayer so much money that you ought to be able to tap into something. And I just wondered if you've investigated that. Thanks.
I'm glad you brought that up. We are in the process. We will be announcing our new executive director the night of our Keeping the Promise event. And that's an area that we definitely are going to look at because part of our strategic plan is that we really want to work on more affordable housing units. That's really the main problem, is that our families get stabilized, they save the money, they pay down debt. And then the work really is trying to find them an apartment that they can afford. Because so many of the apartments, I think they're like an average 2-bedroom is like $2,300 a month in Natick, Framingham area. And that's a lot of money. You have to you have to make a lot of money to be able to afford that. So we feel like we have to explore the government funding, and that will be something that our new executive director will have to really do some research on. I think the philosophy, at least when I came on board 12 or 13 years ago, was that we didn't want to take government funding because then you have to live within their parameters. Like, for example, if a family has a car, that's an asset. So you can't get you can't get assistance from the state because you could potentially live in your car. So we think that's a good thing if you have a car, because then we don't, your transportation goal, we just have to make sure you can have insurance and keep the upkeep. Or it's around $2,200 a month. A family of 4 is not eligible for shelter. So if you make more than $2,241 a month, it might have gone up a little bit with all the inflation and stuff right now, but that's roughly what it is. But when an apartment is $2,200 a month and you might only be making $2,200 a month, you can't survive. Doug, or Sarah, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the volunteer aspect. I know, both Carrie and Sarah have mentioned particular things that they've done currently or in the past as volunteer. Of course, we know Marge has been there from day 0 or even day -0, but I'm curious how many volunteers, what kind of range of activities, maybe what's your most acute volunteer need? The classic question, how can we help?
Yeah, is Marge there? Wait, where's Marge?
Yeah, Marge is there.
Oh, there she is. Yeah, volunteers are the cornerstone of what we do. I mean, Marge, talk about this is a transition year. I think Ricky had mentioned that. Like, this is a transition phase 2 for us, because usually the families went to your congregation and they were the guest in your home. Now we're bringing volunteers into the day center, and volunteers. Do you want to talk about that, Marge, or do you want me to?
I can. I probably don't know everything that volunteers can do. I think it's harder right now because when they were coming to the congregation, it was so visible and so easy to see what we were doing. And it's harder to get volunteers to engage because they're not exactly sure what to do. So during our host week, we provided meals. I cooked 2 meals and took them over and dropped them off at the day center. People to be there with the families when they're eating, so that they still have interaction with folks that are volunteers, just to eat with them and talk to them. And then they still need overnight people. There's a resident person there, but she needs breaks. So if somebody wanted to go spend the night at the shelter, that's another option. Obviously working on the fundraisers, and then tutoring. There's also high school kids, right, that come in and hang out with the kids and play with them. And so those are the things that I know about. But again, it's more difficult to engage volunteers because they don't get that that feeling of, oh, this is happening at our church and we can go there and be there. And so we really need to emphasize that they still need volunteers. There's still engagement that people can do and help this organization to continue to do all the amazingly incredible things that they do.
Yeah, our shelter's open 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And like Marge said, we're all learning right now, since we reopened in June, and our staff is trying to come up with as many volunteer opportunities as possible. We do need to staff the front desk on the weekends for a full day. So we need people, we have it broken up into 2 and 3 hour shifts to come in. And sometimes, and Marge said it beautifully when we did, remember when we did that video, Marge, you said volunteers just have to be present when they're at the day center. Do you want to explain what that means? What you meant?
Well, the best example I can give you of that is when we were in the congregations. It was hard for people who spent the night, who didn't necessarily see the families, to understand that they were actually doing something. And my response to that is, if you weren't here, we wouldn't be doing this. So that's one thing. If they don't have staff at the front desk, they don't have a shelter. The other is, I'm going to put my sister on the spot here. She's rather shy and doesn't really like to talk to people. And, but she volunteered one night, and she and this other woman were sitting on the couch, and the woman who was in shelter was not very talkative either. And they were just sitting there watching this ridiculous TV show about people who were injecting themselves with drugs and stuff to make their bodies look better. And all of a sudden they like started talking. So if my sister hadn't just been sitting there with this woman, not intruding on her space, not trying, just being there, they never would have had this interaction. And it's just a matter of being there, just being there to, so that people know other people support them, but it's not, you're not like trying to make them talk. You're not trying to engage them. You're just there. And presence is really a very spiritual thing, to be able to just be with someone and not feel an obligation to do a certain thing or be a certain way. And one of the homelessness, one of the biggest issues is isolation. You know, you feel like you're alone, and knowing that there are people who are just going to come hang out with you is really, really important. So presence is important. Being at the front desk, you may never do anything at the front desk. You may just sit there for 3 hours, but you're there, and it makes it possible for this program to continue. Does that explain it?
Yeah.
And Pat, did you have a question?
I have a quick question for you. How do you handle the multiple languages issues and challenges you might have?
We have family coaches that are bilingual in Spanish, Portuguese. And then if we can't communicate, then we pull in a volunteer who might be able to.
That's good.
Yeah, we had one Japanese woman in shelter, and we had somebody come out and help us with interpretations. Marge, that was a good explanation of volunteering. I mean, I was just talking to our board chair, and we're going to put out a call for like a handyman. If somebody, you know, like can hang pictures and you know, there's stuff that we need help with, because we're a staff of all women and some of us are not good with
Well, that's
that.
really apropos that Carrie just happens to have his digital hand up already.
But you know, just there's a lot of ways, and being there for us for our fun, you know, just to spread the word about like our Keeping the Promise event. That's a huge, because and Carrie, I'll be right with you. I just want to put a plug in for Keeping the Promise. Keeping the Promise is on November 18th, and it's a hybrid. We call it a hybrid event. There's going to be a very small studio audience up at the Walnut Hill School for the Arts. That's where we're going to film it from. And it's going to be live streamed on your TV, on your YouTube channel, Family Promise YouTube channel. And during that night, we're going to interview 3 families, one from each of our programs, that will talk to you about, talk to the audience and say what impact our community has had on their lives, you know, what brought them to Family Promise, where they are today. And just to give you a real, I'm big on, if you donate money to this organization, you want to know what the impact is. And you'll get to see what the impact is that night. We'll also be introducing our new executive director that evening. And then we have a great entertainment lined up. We have 2 professional performers. One is Allie Haber, who's a young pop artist. She has been with us for years. If anybody attended the walk, she sang the national anthem at our walk a few years ago when we did it at the senior center. But she performs across the country. And then another gentleman named Rhett Price, who's a hip hop violinist. He himself was homeless after he graduated from Berkeley. He played in the subway systems, and now he gets over $10,000 a gig. and he's performing for us. So we'll have a fun evening of entertainment, and then we have an online auction that there's something on it for everybody on your holiday gift shopping list, or maybe something for yourself. But our community has been extremely generous in providing donations for that.
If you could be sure to put a link to that in the chat maybe, and then I'll make sure I share that out with the group.
Sure. I was going to forward you this PowerPoint presentation, Doug,
Yep.
and
Yep.
then I can put the link in with that.
Okay.
Karen, you had a question?
Can
Oh.
I add?
Yes.
The other thing that we're trying to do that night is to have people have parties in their homes or at their churches, called watch parties. And one of the things that will happen is you'll get the link, and then we're going to have trivia contests and all kinds of things that you can be engaged in during the night, so that you can watch that, or after the fact, you could show it to your congregations or do it in a coffee hour and just show the administrative part at the beginning. I think one of the things about Family Promise is as soon as people hear about it, it makes sense to them. And so convincing people to donate to an organization that is so clearly doing amazing work, it is, once people know about it, I think that's really the important thing too, is to get more people to understand what Family Promise does, because it's just an incredible organization that does incredible things.
It's what you do, but it's also the whole premise, I think, of approaching family homelessness, and approaching the families, not that you're broken, you're a loser, there's something wrong with you, but you are a capable, hardworking, good person who just needs a little boost. And I think that belief in somebody can go so far into their upward trajectory. So I think that's, to me at least, a huge appeal of the organization, is the mentality behind it, of seeing people as good people that need help rather than bad people that are a weight on the system, I think is huge.
I'm going to share one more story with you, but I want to see what Carrie has a question. I'll take a couple more.
Well, it's just a quick kind of clarification, I guess, to interject is, while anyone probably in the audience knows, I do volunteer a lot of work around town, probably involved with 3 or 4 organizations at a time. I've actually been a paid employee over at the Native Affordable Housing Trust on Bacon Street, and also at Family Promise. So I do volunteer a lot. I have been getting paid for the work I performed. That's all. Just for those in the audience who thought I was just, all I did was volunteer.
Sorry, Carrie. Yeah. Right. Cindy, you had your hand up too. Yeah.
Yes.
So a couple of questions. I'll just say, so when did Family Promise start is one question. Families who are not eligible for Family Promise, I'm just curious if you could briefly describe how those families get services and what those places are. And then there was an 89%,
Get permanent
I guess
housing.
it was success. So the other 11, was it?
11%. Yeah.
What happens to those people, or what happened to those people?
Okay, so the first question, we opened our doors October 2008.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens for someone who doesn't qualify for our program?
Yeah.
Our intake process, when they call, if we can't immediately help the family, we make sure that we give them resources that they can reach out to. And if they can't get through, a lot of times we just need to listen. And like Marge said, be present, let the person vent. And then we start saying, okay, have you tried this? Have you tried that? And then what we will do is we'll make calls to other agencies on their behalf. So even if we can't take them into shelter right away, we make sure that they have some resources that they can access. So it's not like, sorry, we can't help you. Okay. And I just was talking at staff meeting with one of our family coaches, and she said, this one woman was just so upset when she called. And by the end of the conversation, she said, I'm so glad I called you, because you're the only person who I've called that actually listened and gave me resources.
Hmm.
So, so we do try to help as many people. We can say 64 people came through our doors and had our services, but that doesn't mean that's the only number that we helped. We had, so far this year, we've had I think it's around 357 intake calls that we've had an impact on. The last question you asked was 89% found a permanent housing, affordable housing. That other 11%, we don't count if they moved in with a relative or moved in with a friend. Okay, that's independent, one family by themselves. But if they double bunked, if they shared an apartment, we don't count that in that 89%.
And I do have one other question, which
Sure.
is, I imagine that the demand for help from you all is bigger than what you can provide, or not. And just so, like, what's the relative situation?
We've built the infrastructure right now to handle more calls. We hired an additional family coach in July who's been training and doing all our intakes that to handle the increase in our homelessness prevention program. So we're good with staff. We just need to get a new executive director in place this fall.
And in terms of being able to provide for families who can work and who meet all the criteria, you're able to provide for those people who knock on your door.
Yes.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's only because the community's been so responsive.
Yeah.
When we need something, we go out to the community.
Thank you.
Did somebody else have a hand up? Oh, Doug.
Yeah, me again.
That's okay.
One of your slides talked about that you had originally had a target of you had gone down to a target of 90-day stay, which you had achieved with both of your families. And it I guess, two-part question. One, whatever the other number was, it was much higher.
Yes.
So it seemed like a very aggressive, not in a bad word, but just a significant decrease. And I'm curious how you, like, what's the criteria for leaving? Do people not leave until they have another housing alternative? Or do you sometimes have to say, that's it, you've reached the amount of time that we can provide for you, or what?
I'm so glad you caught me. I should have been more informative on that slide. So let me just address that. On average, families stayed in shelter in the rotational model 146 days in 2021. Okay. Some families, anybody who's volunteered with us knows some of our families had stayed as long as 9 months, 10 months, 12 months, which is really long to be in a congregate living situation. So during our strategic plan, we said, if we can have families be in a static site so that they don't have to worry about that rotational model and the stress that it put on the families, and they can access their family coaches on demand pretty much because we're all in the same building, we can decrease the stay in shelter. And we set 60 to 90 days as the target. Not only that, but we embellished our transitional or our sale program where we're giving subsidies if they can't get TVRA money from Framingham. We're giving them $600 a month towards their rent to help defray the cost of rent, because getting families into their own homes is the best situation for the children. So right now, when we opened our doors in in June 21st, I think we have 4 families that have circled out of shelter, okay, and moved into sale. And the only one, they were all ready to move it out within 60 to 90 days. The one family that we're waiting for is just waiting for her apartment. She's met her goal, but the apartment's just in the process of getting cleaned up and, and redone so that she can move in. And she's moving in this week. So that's why the time frame went down, Doug. It's not that they're moving out of our program. They're just going from shelter into transitional living into a home of their own.
Also, when Family Promise first started, we had a director, an assistant director, and I think that was it. Maybe one family coach, but the sheer numbers and the sheer need was just so difficult that I'm sure that was part of it too. It took longer and it's taken a long time to figure out what the best way of approaching everything is. But Family Promise, the thing that's always impressed me about Family Promise is they have never left anybody hanging. It's always, if you can't function in we've had people who were asked to leave the program, although I don't think that happens much anymore. But at the beginning, there were a few. But it was never with, we need you to leave, go somewhere else. It was always, we need you to leave. Here's a program that you can access. And that is one of the most remarkable things I think about this program is their wraparound of everybody they interact with, either giving them resources or it's just remarkable. It's always been, I don't even know how they started out without being totally overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed and all I was doing was hosting families once a week, 3 times a year. But just the amazing way that they have served every family with which they've interacted.
So a
So,
little bit of, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, Carol, I was just gonna ask you, you have 3 places where folks can stay on site, and you have people coming in and going out. How do you coordinate that? How do you know if someone needs your services and you don't have a bed, and it's a week or a month, and then 2 people may leave out in a row? I mean, do you have a waiting list? How do you manage that?
We do have a waiting list so that whenever we have an opening, we go back to the waiting list. But a lot of times families on the waiting list per se have found other places that they can seek shelter. Sometimes they might be temporarily bunking with somebody, and then as soon as we have an opening, they come into the program. But we do our best, and I mean, that's what it's great now that the target is 60 to 90 days, because we can bring families in more readily than we could with the rotational model when they were maybe in the rotation for 10 months. Did I answer your question? Doug?
Actually,
Or
Sarah.
Sarah?
Yeah, this is a really minor question. Several months ago in our church bulletin, I saw a request for help with an organization that unfortunately I cannot remember the name of, that seemed to be somewhat allied with Family Promise of providing home, furniture or kitchen goods or whatever,
Yes.
when the families move out of shelter and into their homes. And is that, do you know what, does this sound familiar to you? Can you?
Yes, we partner with a ton of agencies because our belief is, why reinvent the wheel? Years ago, if one of our families moved out, we would put the call out, and then all this furniture would come into Carmen Street Church, and it would just it'd be chocker block full, the 2 rooms that we had with furniture.
Mhm.
But now we partner with an agency, and which is probably what you're talking about, New Life Furniture in
Could be.
Walpole.
Okay.
So when we get somebody in our database who calls and says, I'm moving and I don't need this, blah, 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 we say, please donate it to New Life Furniture, because what New Life does is that they have they have a huge warehouse in Walpole. I've been there because I've taken furniture there myself. And when a family moves out, our family coaches book them an appointment there, and then they can go and furnish their whole home.
So they do stuff in addition to furniture. Do they do stuff like
Household
pots and
goods.
pans and sheets and towels and baby supplies and what have you?
I don't know if they do the sheets and towels, but they do like plates and pots and pans, any kind of household items and furniture.
Well, for people trying to clean out houses, that's I gotta say, actually, one of my most satisfying volunteer experiences ever. And mine, I don't do a lot with Family Promise, or hadn't in the past, but my aunt was downsizing and had a couch she no longer needed, and we called you folks, and there was a family that was just getting into an apartment. So my son and I moved this couch into their apartment, and the two little kids, the two little boys, which is bouncing up and down on this thing with the, as soon as we got it placed, with the biggest grins on their faces. And it was so fun to see.
Yeah, well, I mean, in pre-pandemic, we had a move committee that, so it was a volunteer opportunity that when a family was moving, we'd put the call out and then a group of volunteers would help move the family. We're just starting to get a lot of these volunteer opportunities back up and running in this post-pandemic mode, to the level that our volunteers are comfortable with volunteering.
Yeah. One thing I just want to put out there for the benefit of the group, and I'll put this up in the follow-up email as well. When Carole and I were corresponding about having her come speak, one of the options that we looked at was having us go there and visit the day center, which is still an option on the table. So I think maybe the easiest way to do that would be for anybody here that might be interested in actually having a visit. And I think Carole has said we would want to do that not at 9 o'clock, but at 10 o'clock or later, after the families have moved into their kind of daytime activities. Let me know, and then we can kind of, collectively work with Carole to arrive at a particular day that would be good. It's not a just drop in whenever you feel. This is something we would schedule.
Yeah,
But, yeah.
We have Barbara Ward is our administrative assistant and our live-in, and she's at the front desk 9 to 5 every day. But spur of the moment, people dropping in to take a tour of the day center. It's easier if I know that you're coming, so I can plan to be there.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that offer.
Yeah. No, I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
I was going to share one last story with you, just to give you an idea, because our families, like I said, come in all shapes and sizes. Sue Crossley was at one of our network congregations doing a mission moment about Family Promise. And after the service, this young woman, she was probably like 31, 32, came up and said, "Can you help me? I'm about to become homeless." And so Sue said, let's talk. So they started to talk. It was a young woman who had 2 master's degrees and a 3-year-old son. And she had a significant other, but he left the picture. So she was with the 3-year-old son in the apartment that they needed both rents to pay. The son was diagnosed with a speech issue and learning disabilities. So she was paying private pay because her insurance wouldn't pay for private speech therapy. And so it was $300 a month, $300 a week, $1,200 a month. Plus she had to pay the rent. And she fell behind and was going to be evicted. So when she came into our program, the first thing we had to do was kind of resolve the issue with the son. And our family coach knew that a 3-year-old should be getting either speech therapy through the town, through the school system, or through early intervention. So that was the first thing that was resolved, was getting the speech therapy that the child needed so that we could eliminate that expense. The next thing we did was went to bat with the landlord, and the landlord really liked this woman. So we paid down the arrears. And then we started to look, evaluate, maybe the mom needed to find another apartment that was more reasonable. So the family coach assisted the mom to find an apartment she could afford on her own. Then we started to look at her resume and said, you could be making a lot more money than you're making right now. You have 2 masters. And so we had volunteers come in and work with her on her resume, prepared her for an interviews. She ended up getting a job that was $25,000 more a year than what she was in. But when she was living in the moment, she couldn't see it for herself.
Mhm.
She was treading water. And so this was a case, this woman would have fallen through, you know, really fallen on hard times had it not been for making that one outreach to our executive director after she gave a talk. So it can really happen to anybody, that they fall, that something like this happens. So just, I wanted to throw that one out. I mean, that story, we started our life program early because of that mom. We weren't going to start it until 2018, first quarter 2018, but she approached our executive director in December of 2017, and we said, we got to help this mom.
I think that's such a good story because I think it illustrates this woman, you know, I don't know when her partner left the scene, but perhaps her relationship was recently on the outs and she had that stress. She had the stress of finding appropriate care for her child and worrying about her child. She had it's like all this stress just, and you can't think forward and think in big picture stuff when you're just trying to respond to this crisis and that crisis and what do I do right now. So I think that's a wonderful story about the, you know, a relatively small intervention in terms of finances making a huge difference.
And also that it can happen to anyone. I mean, a woman with 2 master's degrees, you know. Yeah.
Well, another quickie is that we had a mom in our life program who was a hairdresser, okay? And she needed to earn more money because that's part of our, you know, what we do. We want to
Oh, no.
maximize people's earnings. So our family coach said, you know, if you went back for color specialist, you could earn more money. So she got the woman, she helped the woman find the classes. She went through the classes. She passed, she got her certificate. So the family coach worked with her to advocate with her boss that now she should earn more per hour because now she's a color specialist. So that went on for a few months. And then the woman built her book of business. So our family coach said, now it's time to go back to your boss and say, I don't want an hourly wage. I want to be on commission, because she had the book of business to support it. And she did. So now she's earning a lot more money because she's on commission. The next school that this woman has is to actually rent a chair in a salon, because that's the next step you take to owning your own salon. But the family coach is coaching her along the way, and she's maximizing her income. So she has, you know, she can take care of her bills and be self-sustaining.
And it must be more interesting or enjoyable for her as a hairstylist to be able to do more things and have more skills, and you know, it sounds like a win-win.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Carole. I want to thank you and Marge so much for coming this morning. You know, although some of us knew something about Family Promise, I think we've all been educated. Honestly, one of the most remarkable things about this is how nimble and responsive your organization has been to changing circumstances, not just in changing circumstances of the families themselves, but through the pandemic, you know, how we can deliver services and so forth. So in a meta way, that's almost, you know, a model for how you work with families, it seems like, of, you know, you could be doing things differently, and here's how. So thank you again. And again, anybody interested in having an on-site visit, just let me know, and we'll collect that subset of us together and have a field trip, which would be great.
Yeah.
And I just want to remind people that next Monday, Halloween Day, I think it's appropriate, being the scary Halloween day, we're going to talk about the election. At least the November ballot. You know, last week we talked about the 5 ballot questions. And by the way, I shout out, thank you, Marge, for providing a lot of clarifying information about question 4 and for us all. But next week we'll be talking about the candidates for the different offices and how, you know, we don't have to just vote red or blue. There are actually pretty good candidates on both sides and on some of those offices. So encourage everybody to come to that. One other quick.
Carrie's-
Oh, who's got a hand
Carrie
up?
had his hand up.
Yeah, Carrie, you're on mute right now. Now you went back to mute. Try one more time.
There we go. A quick shout out to the buildings. It had been a metal fabricating place. So it's just they transformed it into an incredible space. It's really a cool building, especially the second floor. And if you do the tour, just if it's on Halloween, just don't go down the spider basement. It's really
oh wow.
no, you don't want to go there. Then as you go down there, there's literally you have to get down almost on your hands and knees.
I know, it's awful. It's awful.
Between the joists holding it up and all these pipes that they have to down there. Literally, you've got about 3 feet of clearance down there. It's pretty.
Yeah.
Spider Basin's the perfect name for it, but the rest of the building is terrific.
Cool.
Definitely.
Well, it would be fun to see. The one other thing I wanted to do was give actually Cindy a chance to say a quick word about the following Monday, November 7th. Frank Januzzi, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, will be with us. Frank is a relative by marriage in Cindy's family, and she's now left the screen. I bet she's going
to get a visual aid.
Frank works for a foundation that's focused on East Asian U.S. relations.
Right.
And I may have misstated that, but I think he's going to be a fascinating speaker. Cindy, describe him a little bit for us.
Sure. Sorry, that was my mom calls. Just like, okay, Mom, I'll call you right back. Frank is an Asia specialist. He worked for the State Department, and then he moved and was an aide to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I think Joe Biden was chair during much of the time that he was working there. And then he took, I think it was 1 or 2 years as an interim director of Amnesty International. And since the last, I don't know, it's getting on maybe almost 10 years that he's been with the Mansfield Foundation, whose mission is to bring legislators from the United States, Congress and Senate to Korea and Japan, and likewise to have those people come to Washington. He goes on all kinds of trips. He's been to North Korea, I would say at least 5 or 6 times. I've known him since he was in college, which would be in the 80s. He's in Vietnam now, and he I think his primary, so his job is mostly Korea and Japan, but I think his primary expertise is also China. So he's always somebody that you can say, hey, what's going on with our relations with China? What about Taiwan? And then I can also ask him about Ukraine, like what's going to happen there? And he just always has really interesting things to say. So that's Frank.
Yeah, it sounds like it'll be fascinating. And I know Martin has his hand up to tell us about another important event that's going on this week too.
Yes, you got it. Actually, a couple of events, but the big one is the Community Preservation Act. We're having a public forum on a Zoom forum on Wednesday. And we plastered it all over Facebook, but if you don't get Facebook, I put it on the chat. I put a link to the Natick patch, which has reproduced our press release explaining it, plus the poster. So that would be interesting. I know we talked about the CPA back in March, but now it's becoming kind of a hotter issue all around town because the election is coming up in November. And the other thing to bring up is town meeting tomorrow has a couple of contentious issues, if you like controversy. Starting with putting the town clerk as a appointed position rather than an elected position, which was started last town meeting session and was deferred because there were so many amendments that were brought up. And then the other one is the dam, which if no matter what side you're on, both sides apparently have turned their attention away from the select board, which actually has the authority to make a decision, and has started organizing people to come to town meeting, which really doesn't have the authority to make a decision. So it's going to be interesting what kind of what kind of debate ensues. The town meeting could conceivably allocate money for repairing the dam rather than removing it, but that won't really carry any weight unless the select board makes that decision. But it will be an interesting, interesting town meeting, whatever the case. So I know many people are town meeting members and will be there anyway. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you, Martin.
not to be missed.
Right. Yeah, must watch TV or go in person. You can stand up and
Well,
say your piece.
yeah.
All right. We could probably turn the recording off at this point, Martin.